I was 17 the first time she said it. It was after dinner. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon dish soap, and whatever disappointment had lingered in her voice. Since I showed her my piano composition, I'd scribbled it onto staff paper, crammed between English homework and some extra hours babysitting for the neighbors. She held the pages like they were a damp towel. You skipped editing your college essay for this? I stood by the sink, still holding the plate I was drying. I thought you might want to see. Elaine didn't sigh. That would have meant emotion. She folded the paper precisely, set it on the counter, and said it like she was noting the weather. Your dreams are stupid. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even cruel. It was just declarative. Okay, I said. She turned, pulled the rubber gloves from the drawer, and slipped them on, like it was any other Tuesday. You'll outgrow it, she added, rinsing a wine glass. I set the dish down carefully, quietly. The sponge in the sink hissed as the water hit it. I wondered if she thought I was crying. I wasn't. I like it, I said, and I hated how soft my voice sounded. Elaine didn't look at me. Liking things isn't a plan. I walked out before the first tear could show itself. It didn't fall until I was halfway up the stairs, where she couldn't see it. Or wouldn't. 12 years later, I still remember the way she folded that paper creased edges in different fingers, and I remember what she didn't say. Do you want it toasted? The barista asked, holding up my bagel. Yes, please. I paid in cash, the way I always did in that coffee shop. The place wasn't special, but it had a back booth that faced the window, and the lighting was soft enough that I could write for 2 hours without thinking about her voice. Your dreams are stupid, it had calcified, like plaque under the gum line of my thoughts. I slid into the booth, pulled my notebook from my bag, and uncapped my pen. The ink stuttered on the first line. Every time you get that look, I know you're about to rewrite an entire chapter, someone said from behind me. I turned slightly. The woman standing there wore a faded jean jacket and a beanie despite the heat. Maya. I don't rewrite, I said. I refine. She snorted. You're a masochist. I'm a writer. Maya slid into the seat across from me and stole a piece of my bagel. You've got that haunted by a demon energy again, she said through her chewing. It's not a demon. Elaine, then. I didn't answer. Maya pulled out her phone and began tapping something. Probably an audition list. She glanced up. You gonna call her? No. She's your mother. That's not a synonym for kind. Maya nodded. Fair. I closed the notebook, leaned back. She said something once. I said, go on. I hesitated. She looked at my first sheet music. I said slowly and told me my dreams were stupid. Not angry. Not yelling. Just like it was math. Maya blinked. Shit. I nodded. That stuck. Yeah, well, trauma's a clingy little bitch. She said it lightly, but her eyes were sharper than her tone. You gonna use it? In the book? In your fuel tank? I paused. I don't write revenge arcs. No, she said, but you live one. That night, I lay on my mattress still on the floor, because I hadn't bought a frame yet, and stared at the cracked ceiling of the apartment. Stupid dreams. I whispered it aloud. Just once. Like invoking a curse to break it, my phone buzzed. A text, Mom. Don't forget to send Tommy a card. It's his birthday this weekend. Something appropriate. No hi. No how are you. Just another assignment from the woman who wanted me to be efficient. Unobtrusive. I typed back. Me. I already. Id. Also, I'm not 12 anymore. She didn't reply. I turned my phone face down and opened my manuscript. There, in the margins of chapter 3, I wrote the line. She folded my dream like a napkin and handed it back, uncreased and forgotten. And, for the first time in months, the words came easily. Asterisk asterisk sit like a young lady. I was 5, maybe 6. My knees had been swinging freely under the kitchen chair while I colored. She pressed her fingers gently on my thigh, nudging them closed. Not unkindly, just firmly. That's how it always was. Gentle correction with invisible weight. She trimmed me like a bonsai tree delicately, deliberately, never admitting she was shaping anything. You're too loud when you laugh. Pink doesn't suit your skin tone. Don't get used to praise. It makes people lazy. It wasn't cruelty. Cruelty would have been easier to name, easier to fight. Her version was quieter. Control as elegance, dismissal as refinement. That bedtime, she read me books about obedient girls who made good choices, ballet dancers with tight buns and controlled emotion, princesses who waited. I asked once if she could read me the pirate one again, the one with the girl who stole a ship. She looked at the cover and said, "This one's a little rough, don't you think?" I never asked again. Dad tried, in his way. He wasn't home much commuting, long hours, but sometimes he'd slip me chocolate under the dinner table. Once, he bought me a blank notebook and wrote "For your songs" on the inside cover. Elaine saw it and smiled too tightly. "That's sweet," she said to him, "but maybe encourage her to focus on things she'll actually use." He shrugged, turned to me. "Use it anyway." I kept it under my bed for years. The paper smelled like hope. "Don't slouch. You look lazy. You're sensitive. That's something we'll have to work on. Don't talk like that in front of people. It's too much." One time I sang along to the radio in the car. Something light, poppy. I hit the high note just right and smiled. Elaine turned the volume down with 2 fingers. "That's enough, honey. Let's have some quiet." It was always quiet in her world. Perfect silence. Polished furniture. The click of her heels down the hallway like a metronome counting down how long I had before she corrected the next thing. I learned not to protest, just to fold. At school, I got straight A's. I wrote poems and shoved them into the back of my binder. I performed in choir, but never auditioned for solos. I didn't want to feel the weight of her eyes in the audience, measuring, filing. "You did fine," she'd say. "Next time, smile more. You looked a little intense." At 13, I told her I wanted to learn guitar. She handed me a flyer for a typing course. "Typing," she said, "is a skill that will never go to waste." George's dad started coming home less. Work dinners. Deadlines. I think, now, he found ways to avoid the quiet. Even when he was home, he spoke mostly in nods and shoulder pats. Still, he gave me space. Elaine filled it. "You're very bright," she said once, inspecting my math homework, "but you don't need to show it off." I asked her what she meant. Asterisk, she smiled like it was obvious. "People like girls who are pleasant, not know-it-alls." At 15, I tried out for the school play. Elaine raised an eyebrow when she saw the script. "You'll be on stage, in front of people." I nodded and she was silent for a moment. "Is it appropriate?" I didn't make the cast. Tommy was born when I was 16. A late baby. A surprise. He gave me something else to love, someone small, unformed, untouched by all this shrinking. I sang to him at night, held him until he fell asleep. He didn't know yet that love could be measured in corrections. Elaine was softer with him. I saw it. Maybe boys were allowed more softness. Or maybe she'd already poured all her rules into me and was simply tired. "You're very dramatic," she said when I cried after my story didn't win the school contest. "Be practical. No one pays their bills with poems." I nodded, wiped my cheeks. She handed me a tissue, not unkindly. "You'll see. I'm trying to help you." She always said that, as if helping meant whittling, as if love was a chisel. By the time I graduated high school, I knew exactly how to behave at the dinner table, how to wear just enough lip gloss to look polished, but not enough to look vain, how to speak when spoken to, and how to say thank you even when I felt like choking on it. She was proud of that. "You're becoming such a poised young woman." I smiled, said thank you, tucked the scholarship letter deeper into my backpack. I hadn't told her yet it was for a liberal arts program, out of state, creative writing and music theory. I'd already accepted. Some dreams, I decided, would not be shrunk, not anymore. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I was 12 the first time I composed something real, not just scales or practice pieces. Something that rose out of me fully formed, like breath after being held too long. I wrote it on the piano in the church basement during choir practice. Sister Evelyn let me stay late as long as I wiped the keys after. The room always smelled faintly of dust and lemonwood polish. It was quiet, reverent. My fingers moved slowly, at first tentative, then certain. The melody had come to me while walking home from school, just a few notes repeating like a heartbeat. It spilled out, soft and strange. I played until the lights flickered and I had to go. That night, I wrote it down in the notebook Dad had given me. "For your songs," he'd written. It was the only place I ever felt like all of me belonged. I wrote something. I told Mom the next morning, over toast. She looked up from the paper. "Wrote what?" "A song." "On the piano." She sipped her coffee, paused. "Oh, that's nice. But you should be focusing on things that matter." "I think it does matter." Her smile was thin. "Of course you do." I stopped mentioning it after that, but I didn't stop writing. I started carrying that notebook everywhere, stuffed in my backpack, tucked under my pillow. At school, I wrote lyrics in the margins of math worksheets. On weekends, I borrowed books on music theory from the library and hid them inside SAT prep books. One afternoon, I stayed late in the music room after band. Mrs. Delaney, the choir director, passed by the door. "You wrote that?" she asked when I finished playing. I nodded. She came closer, leaned against the piano. "It's beautiful." "Original?" I hesitated. "Yeah." She tilted her head. "You should think about submitting it to the state contest." My heart thudded. Would that be okay? Why wouldn't it be? I wanted to say, "Because someone told me dreams are stupid." Instead, I said, "Just wondering." She smiled and handed me a pamphlet. "Deadline's next Friday." I brought the form home and tucked it between my geometry notes. I left it on the kitchen counter, next to Mom's teacup at dinner. She didn't mention it. I brought it up carefully. "There's a music contest. Mrs. Delaney thinks I should enter." Elaine didn't look up from her salad. "Do you have time for that?" "It's just a form." She set her fork down. "You've already got too many distractions. You'll burn out." "It's just one thing." She took a sip of water. "You know, your cousin Anna focused on math. She just got a scholarship." Dad glanced up. "If she wants to try, let her." Elaine gave him a tight smile. "Of course." I just want her to be realistic. The next morning, the form was gone from the counter. I never found it. I told Mrs. Delaney I decided not to enter. She looked at me too long, then nodded. You ever change your mind? You know where to find me. By 8th grade, I knew what not to share. I'd write my lyrics in code, leave them half-finished. The notebook filled up with verses I never spoke aloud. The piano became my confessional. I started hearing songs in the patterns of the rain, in the way doors closed, in the rhythm of my own walking. But I played only when no one was home. And I stopped singing altogether at school. They thought I was just shy at home. They thought I was well behaved. Only Mrs. Delaney saw something else. You're quiet, she told me once, after rehearsal. But when you play, I hear a roar under it. I didn't know what to say. She handed me a folder. I submitted your last composition to the regional program. You got in. I blinked. You wait. Without asking. I figured you'd say no. I stared at the sheet. Acceptance letter. Weekend workshop. Small recital. You'll have to tell your parents, she added gently. My throat tightened. Or, she said, you can tell them it's extra credit, and we'll figure out the rest. I nodded. Mrs. Delaney never asked me why I needed the lie, but she made space for it. The workshop changed. Something, not because it was grand, it wasn't. Just a group of awkward teens with wrinkled sheet music and overtuned instruments. But for 2 days, I was just a girl who played, who belonged. No one asked if it was useful. No one told me to be quiet. On the last night, we each played one original piece. I chose the one I'd written in the church basement. When I hit the final note, the room was silent for a full breath. Then clapping, real clapping. I walked off stage with something new pressed into me, not pride. Possibility. Back home, Elaine never asked how the extra credit went. I didn't offer. I just went to my room, opened the notebook, and wrote, even when you bury seeds in silence, they find a way to bloom. Asterisk. The scholarship offer came in a plain envelope. Elaine didn't notice it at first. It was sandwiched between a Kohl's coupon and the gas bill. I found it after school and read the letter alone in the driveway, the car engine cooling beside me. Full ride. Out of state. Creative writing and music composition. I folded it slowly and slipped it into my backpack. I waited for days to tell her she was ironing. The living room smelled like starch and lavender. There's a letter, I said, pretending my voice wasn't shaking. From Loring College. She didn't look up. Didn't we decide you were applying to state? I did. But this came first. I handed it to her. She read it quickly, efficiently, like she was scanning a grocery list. When she was done, she laid it on the coffee table, not carefully, not carelessly, just without weight. It's far. Not that far. It's unnecessary. My stomach turned. It's a full ride. And what, exactly, do you plan to do with a degree in daydreaming? I stared at her. It's literature and music. It's not. She set the iron down, unplugged it. Be honest. You want to run away. I said nothing. You'll be back in a year, she said, not angry, just confident. When you realize this is all a phase. I nodded slowly. Maybe. She turned back to the laundry, satisfied. And that was the end of the conversation. Dad drove me to the airport that August. He didn't say much, he never did. But right before I walked through the gate, he handed me an envelope. For when things feel heavy, he said. I opened it later, in the middle of a bumpy flight. Inside was a check for $500, and a yellow post-it note. Keep writing. Loring. Smelled like old books and rain. My dorm room had one window, to roommates, and no air conditioning. I loved it instantly. No one asked me to sit straighter. No one lowered the volume on my music. I played piano in the practice rooms until my fingers ached. I read until dawn. I wrote and rewrote the same sentence 5 times just because I could. I became someone new. Not louder, not braver, just unfiltered. Elaine called once a week. Sunday mornings. Like mass. How are your classes? She'd ask. Good. Are you eating enough? Yes. Have you thought about transferring next year? Closer to home. I changed the subject every time. Once, I mentioned a professor who loved my short story. She paused. That's nice. But just remember not to get your hopes up. People in the arts are very competitive. Another time, I told her I was performing a composition in a winter showcase. She said, "That sounds lovely," and never asked how it went. The first time I published a poem in the college journal, I sent her the link. She never mentioned it, but Thanksgiving, I came home out of guilt, not desire. She had ironed napkins and made pot roast. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, quiet, gleaming, suffocating. At dinner, she smiled at relatives and told them I was taking a few creative classes. When I corrected her, said I was double majoring, she pinched the inside of my wrist under the table. After dessert, I hid in my old bedroom and cried into the pillow that still smelled like a former version of myself. Back at school, I stopped answering every call. One Sunday, I let it ring and listened to the voicemail. Her voice, clipped but even. I hope you're not wasting the opportunity you've been given. You need to be practical, not impulsive. I deleted it. Then I sat at my desk and wrote a scene where a girl burned down a house with her silence. Senior year, I got an internship with a small press in Boston. I worked under a woman named Janine who wore combat boots and read everything, aloud in a low growl. "You've got good bones," she told me, red penning my manuscript. "But stop writing like you're asking for permission." I blinked. "I don't." "Yes, you do," she said. "I can feel it. Write like the room is already yours." I stayed after hours. I organized slush piles and copy-edited interviews and swept the back room when no one else wanted to. And on lunch breaks, I wrote. Not softly, not carefully. Elaine called in April. "So what now?" she asked. "I'm applying to residencies, fellowships, publishing jobs." A pause. "You're not coming home?" "I'll visit. But no." Silence. "Don't be hasty." I smiled to myself. "I'm not." She exhaled slowly. "I just don't want you to be disappointed." "I'm not. You don't even know what you're walking into." "Yes," I said, calmly. "That's the point." After graduation, I didn't stay for pictures. I took the train straight to a friend's couch in New York. No plan. Just notebooks. And keys under my fingers again. Quiet. This time, by choice. Asterisk. The plan was 12 months. Max. 1 year to regroup, save money, work part-time while I finished the novel draft and figured out where to land next. Elaine called it a smart pause. I called it a calculated retreat that it lasted 3 years. "Don't think of it as moving backward," she said, folding towels. "Think of it as staying grounded." "I'm not a tree," I said. She didn't laugh. I moved into my old bedroom, same pale green walls, same creaky desk, same mirror that made me look softer than I felt. The bedspread had been changed to something beige and stiff. Like even my linens were expected to mature. She'd cleared one drawer for me. The rest were filled with sewing kits, spare batteries, and receipts. There was no room for the girl I'd become. "Tommy's excited you're back," she said on the second day. My brother was 9 now. All knees and noise. He barreled into my room with a Nerf gun and a box of Legos and a math worksheet with smiley face stickers. "You gonna be here forever?" he asked. "God, I hope not," I said. He grinned. Elaine overheard and frowned. "Be careful what you say. He takes things literally." I wanted to say, "So did I." I got a job waitressing 3 nights a week and tutoring part-time at the community center. The rest of the time, I tried to write and tried, but in that house, my sentences dried out. I'd start a scene and then hear her in the kitchen, criticizing news anchors, humming judgment. I'd reread my paragraphs and find her voice between the lines, pruning what didn't fit. "You're home," she said once. "You should act like it." "I am. You're always hiding in that room." "Maybe I like hiding." She didn't respond. Sunday dinners became rituals again. Roasted vegetables, meat in some form, a wine she couldn't pronounce but poured with performative ease. Tommy kicked my foot under the table. "You still writing your sad stories?" I smirked. "They're not all sad." Elaine passed the potatoes. "Of course they're not. Some are just confusing." I didn't answer. Dad chewed slowly. "She's talented," he said quietly. Elaine refilled his glass. "Talent needs structure." Once, I stayed out late with a college friend who was passing through town. When I came in just after midnight, she was sitting on the couch, fully dressed, staring at the blank TV screen. "Was I supposed to text you?" I asked. "No," she said. "You're an adult." "Okay. I just find it interesting," she added, "that when you were living alone, you didn't need me. But now that you're here, you forget basic courtesy." I took off my shoes. "I didn't forget. I just don't report anymore." She looked at me like I was a stranger who'd taken her daughter's voice. Tommy liked to sneak into my room and ask questions. "Why do stories matter? Can music make people cry on purpose? What's it like to leave?" I answered everyone. Sometimes I caught Elaine standing just outside my door, listening. Sometimes she didn't bother to pretend. I kept writing, but not well. Every chapter felt over-edited before I even typed it. I'd get halfway through a scene and start deleting. Not because it was bad, but because I imagined her reading it. What would she cut? What would she mock? "You're in a rut," Maya said over the phone. "I'm in a trap." I whispered. "Same thing." I thought coming back would give me time, space. "You went back into the cage and expected to grow wings." I laughed, but it stuck in my throat. One night, I came down for tea and found her at the kitchen table, surrounded by recipe cards. "You used to love my chicken marsala," she said. I was 7. She smiled faintly. "You're still picky." "I'm not." She folded a card in half. "You've changed. You think you're better now." "No," I said. "I think I'm different." "And what exactly is different about being broke and unpublished?" I stared at her. "Everything." We didn't speak the rest of the night. Spring came. My novel sat untouched for weeks. Tommy's birthday arrived. I gave him a journal. "You want me to write a diary?" He said, double quotes, "No. I want you to write whatever they tell you not to." Elaine overheard. "Don't fill his head with nonsense." Tommy looked at me. "Nonsense is where the good stuff lives," I said. That night, I opened a fresh document and wrote one line. She tried to make me small. But the words kept growing teeth. The toast was burnt. Not badly, just enough to curl the edges and set the smoke alarm twitching. I stood by the window, letting the cold air in, waving a dish towel with one hand and holding my mug with the other. Elaine moved calmly, placing the butter dish on the table like it was any other morning. "You always forget the setting," she said. "4 is too high on that toaster. I like it dark. No one likes carcinogens." She poured tea into her white ceramic cup. No sugar, no milk, just lemon. Tommy was still upstairs. Dad had already left for work. It was just us. I sat across from her, placed the mug between us, and didn't say anything. She glanced at the paper but didn't open it. "You're quiet this morning." "I'm usually quiet." "Not lately. You've been restless." I chewed a bite of toast. "Maybe I'm just bored." She set the cup down. "You're 25. Still living at home. Working part-time jobs. At some point, that stops being romantic and starts being irresponsible." The mug in my hand went still. "So this is the conversation," I said. "It's a concern, not a criticism." I swallowed. "No, it's always both." She didn't flinch. I leaned forward. "You think I'm wasting my life. I think you've had enough time to explore." "Explore?" "You're smart, capable, but you're chasing things that don't have a future." I stared at her. "Art, music, that's for hobbies, not stability." "You mean not safety?" "I mean adulthood." I stood, pushed the chair back gently. "I write. I compose. It's not a phase." "You say that," she said, looking up at me. "But where has it gotten you?" I crossed to the counter, picked up the notepad where she wrote grocery lists. I turned it over and wrote, "Where has it gotten me?" Then below it, "Here. Alive. Awake. Still trying." I held it up. She didn't even look at the words. "I'm being practical," she said. "You need to think about a real plan." "And what's your version of real?" She sighed. "Go back to school. Get a certificate. Something useful. There's a program for administrative design downtown. You'd be great at that." "I'd be miserable." "At least you'd have insurance." I laughed softly. "So would a caged bird." "You don't know what it's like to have responsibilities," she snapped. "I pay rent. You pay a third of utilities. You eat my groceries. You use my car. I clean your kitchen. Because you live here." I turned away. She stood. Then, slowly, deliberately, she walked over and placed her hand on the counter. "I didn't mean to sound harsh," she said. "You never do." Silence. "Then I just don't want to watch you fail." I looked at her. "No," I said. "You don't want to watch me fly without asking how." That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the blank wall. The light from my laptop screen stretched across the floor like a question I couldn't answer. Elaine knocked once, then opened the door. She held an envelope. White, sealed. "I printed the course info," she said, "in case you decide to apply." I didn't take it. She placed it on my desk. "Think about it." "I already have." "You're being emotional." "No," I said. "I'm being clear." Her eyes tightened. "I'm giving you until the end of the month," she said. "Either enroll or start paying full rent. And no more freelancing. I want a real income." "That's not an ultimatum. That's a punishment." "It's reality." "No," I said. "It's your fear, dressed up in practicality." Her voice was steady. "This isn't sustainable." I nodded. You're right. Her face shifted just a flicker of surprise. I stood. I'll be out by the end of the week. She opened her mouth, closed it. You don't have to be dramatic. I'm not, I said, stepping past her. I'm being precise. In the middle of the night, I packed my notebooks first, then the piano stand, then the old laptop, still cracked at the hinge, to garbage bags, a suitcase, a heart full of tremors. And the next morning, before she woke, I left the envelope unopened. On the kitchen table, next to it, I placed a post-it note that read, "My dreams are not yours to measure." Asterisk asterisk. The ceiling dripped exactly once every 4 seconds. I timed it on my phone at 2 a.m., staring at the plastic mixing bowl I'd set beneath the spot, where water tapped like a patient insult. The apartment smelled like paint and damp carpet. My mattress was still on the floor. The only chair was a milk crate with a blanket on top, but it was mine. It cost $700 a month, which I split with Maya, who greeted me on move-in day with a chipped mug of coffee and a single raised eyebrow. So you're the writer, huh? Guilty. Cool. I scream in alleys for a living. Sorry, I'm an actor. I smiled. Got it. We lived off ramen, dreams, and discount detergent. She painted quotes on our fridge in Sharpie. I hung fairy lights that never worked. We ran the heater only when one of us shivered too hard to pretend we weren't cold. She practiced monologues in the bathroom mirror. I wrote at the kitchen table, headphones in, surrounded by unpaid bills and rejection emails. We understood each other without small talk. You hungry? She asked one night, poking her head into my room. Kind of. We've got popcorn and expired oatmeal. Gourmet. She tossed me a granola bar. Also, the landlord says the leak won't be fixed until next week. Cool. It's like camping. You're weird, she said, grinning. So are you? She saluted. That's why it works. I got a job at a diner 3 blocks away. Black apron, blistered shoes, 15-minute breaks if you were lucky. Most days, I came home sticky with syrup and sweat. But at night, when the building quieted and Maya went to bed, I sat at my battered laptop and wrote like I was pouring myself out. My first night off, I played piano on my MIDI keyboard for the first time in months. Tentative at first, then clearer. Maya stood in the hallway, arms crossed. Is that original? Yeah. You sound like you've bled in that key. I didn't answer. You should do something with it. I'm trying. No, she said. Trying is a step behind doing. The next day, I uploaded to instrumental pieces to a free music platform. I clicked submit with shaking hands. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need applause. I just needed motion. A week later, one of the tracks got used in a short film. The director emailed me. Are you open to composing for a future project? I stared at the screen so long Maya thought I'd frozen. She read over my shoulder. Told you. You're a freakin' whisper symphony. That's not a phrase. Now it is. On my birthday, Maya gave me a small cake and a thrift store mug that said ask me about my trauma. I laughed until I cried. Elaine didn't call. I didn't notice until the next day. Every morning, I practiced. Every night, I wrote. The leak finally stopped. The window still whistled, but the words started to come back. And so did the music. One evening, I came home to find Maya pacing. Good news or bad news? She asked. Both? You've got a package. Okay. It's from your mom. I stared at the box. Plain, unlabeled, brown tape like a sealed mouth. Maya crossed her arms. Wanna set it on fire? No, I said. Just wanna look at it for a while. Inside, 3 folded towels, 2 Tupperware containers of lasagna, and a printed job listing from a local office supply chain at the bottom. In her handwriting, "This is not sustainable. Please reconsider." Maya picked up the note. Yikes. I nodded. She's consistent. She touched my shoulder. So are you? That night, I wrote for 6 hours straight. No breaks. No edits. By morning, I had the first 3 chapters of a new novella. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Weeks passed. The landlord replaced the leaky pipe with a rusted one that groaned when the water got too hot. Maya booked a non-speaking role in a detergent commercial and came home with a grocery bag full of name-brand pasta. We celebrated like we'd won Emmys. I started researching how to self-publish, free forums, YouTube tutorials, long nights of formatting and second-guessing. Maya walked past one night and said, "You're frowning again." "I'm formatting." She leaned over. "It looks like a real book." "It is a real book." She grinned. "Damn right." I hit publish on a Sunday night. No ceremony. No wine, just silence. And one long breath that felt like release. I didn't tell Elaine. Not because I was hiding, because she didn't need to know. Because her permission had expired. 2 weeks later, I made my first sale. Then 10, then 20. A review popped up. Raw and oddly elegant. Like grief played on a piano. I closed the laptop and cried. Not because I needed the validation. Because I'd found my voice again. And it had teeth. At dinner, Maya raised a toast with water in a wine glass. To my brilliant, bleeding, bookmaking roommate. I raised mine. To my alley screaming, spotlight hunting, pasta bringing sister-in-war. We clinked. The light flickered overhead. But the roof didn't leak. Not anymore. I didn't expect anything. When I hit publish on my novella, there were no fireworks. No applause. Just a blinking cursor, a congratulations screen, and an empty bank account. But by week 3, it had 27 downloads. I refreshed the dashboard 10 times to be sure. People are reading it. Maya asked, toothbrush in mouth. Apparently, strangers. Total strangers. She grinned around the foam. Weird. You're officially infecting the masses. The first email came 2 days later. From someone named Rachel Lee. Subject line. Just read your book, we should talk. I thought it was a scam. I almost deleted it. But the second line caught me. I edit indie work for fun. No strings, no fee. I just love finding good writing that hasn't been mangled yet. I stared at it for 5 minutes before replying. Rachel was sharp. Quick. She had a background in publishing, burned out early, and now freelanced on the side. I'm not looking to manage you, she said in our first Zoom call. Just help sharpen your blade. Her notes were clean. Direct. You have the bones, she said. Now you need muscle. I laughed. So, you're my trainer. I'm your literary spotter. I catch you before you drop the bar on your throat. We started emailing weekly. She'd read my drafts, mark up the weak spots, and ask the questions I avoided. What are you afraid of saying here? She'd write in the margins. Or, you're dancing around the pain. Go through it. Her style wasn't gentle, I didn't need gentle, I needed truth. Elaine texted once during this stretch. How are things? I stared at the screen, then typed. Still writing. She replied. Let me know when you get a real job. I turned my phone face down and opened a new document. Titled it. Chapter 1. a woman they couldn't flatten. Maya threw me a celebration when I crossed 100 sales. It was just a candle in a bagel and a note that said you're officially real. But I saved the note in my drawer, and next to it, I kept Rachel's latest marked up pages and a printed screenshot of the first 5-star review. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m., unsure of everything. I'd sit at the window with tea and stare at the moonlight peeling across the floor like spilled paint, and I'd whisper, "Keep going," to the quiet, because the quiet was finally mine. Rachel called one evening while I was halfway through a rewrite. "You're doing it again," she said. "I haven't even sent it, but you're hesitating, right?" Pausing, editing mid-sentence. I exhaled. "Yeah. Why?" "Because I'm scared it's still not good." "Let me be clear," she said. "You're better than most of what gets published." I stayed silent. "You just haven't caught up to your own voice yet. But it's there. It's waking up." I didn't cry, but I felt something move under my ribs. Like belief. I didn't tell Elaine about the book. Not when it reached 200 sales. Not when it got featured in a niche newsletter. Not even when someone emailed me from the Netherlands saying it reminded them of their grandmother. It wasn't about hiding, it was about peace. And she didn't live there. One morning, Maya burst into my room. "You're trending." "What? Look." She shoved her phone at me. My book cover cropped awkwardly was on a Book Talk post. Some girl with glasses and too much eyeliner sobbing into the camera. "She writes like she's been hurt but still wants to love the world," the girl said. Over 8,000 likes. I covered my mouth. Maya whooped. "You're basically famous now. In very sad, very cool circles." I didn't even promote it. "That's the magic," Rachel texted. "Told you." That night, I lit a candle, played my piano piece softly through headphones, and opened a fresh page. Title: Second Book Draft. I typed the first line, then the second, and I didn't stop. I didn't need applause. I didn't need permission. I didn't even need the roof to stop leaking. I just needed the space to keep going. And now I had it. She didn't call ahead. I opened the door, still in pajama pants and socks, and there she was, Elaine, holding a quilted tote bag and wearing that butter-soft coat she saved for holidays. "I was in the area," she said. "You live 3 hours away." Her smile tightened. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. The apartment smelled like burnt toast and Maya's incense. Elaine's eyes moved across the cluttered laundry basket in the hallway. A stack of books on the heater. A chip in the wall we'd covered with a poster that read "Right O R Rot." "This is cozy," she said. "It's rent-controlled." She raised an eyebrow. "That's not always a compliment." I motioned toward the kitchen. "Want tea?" "I'm fine." She wandered into the living room. Her shoes clicked against the worn floorboards. She stopped at the upright keyboard I'd bought secondhand from a neighbor. "You still play?" "Every day." She ran a hand along the edge. "I remember when you wanted to be a composer." "I still do." She turned. "At some point, you have to face what's realistic." I leaned against the doorway. "And what's that?" "Something stable. Something with health insurance." "I'm working. Waiting tables." I nodded slowly. "And writing." "You can't build a life out of side projects." My hands curled around the tea mug. "I'm building something, even if you can't see it." She looked at the cracked ceiling. "Does the landlord know about the leak?" "It's fixed." "I hope so." "This place smells like mildew." I sipped my tea. "Is that why you came? To inspect my walls?" "No," she said, setting her bag down. to see you, and to understand why you've shut me out. I didn't answer. I know we haven't always agreed. She went on. But I'm still your mother. You are. She looked at me sharply. You don't sound like you believe that means anything. I tilted my head. What do you think it means? She flinched. It means I've supported you, given you shelter, stability, and judgment. I've tried to guide you. You tried to shape me. I tried to protect you. From what? I asked. Failure? Risk? Myself. She didn't answer, and Maya came out of her room then, still wearing headphones and a scarf tied like a turban. Oh, she said, stopping mid-step. Hi. Elaine gave her a once-over. Hello. Maya glanced at me. Everything okay? Fine, I said. Maya gave a small nod and slipped into the kitchen. Elaine picked up a copy of my book from the table. The spine was cracked, pages soft from handling. You still haven't told me what this is, she said, flipping through it. It's my work. I thought you were going to try for something more legitimate. I stepped forward, took the book from her hands. It is legitimate. She blinked. I placed it back on the table. That's mine. I made it, and it's out in the world. You're very defensive. No, I said. I'm just finally unafraid. She crossed her arms. You used to be so polite. I used to be afraid of your silence. Her expression changed, tightened, then cracked, barely. I came here because I miss you, she said, and I sat down. You miss a version of me that made you comfortable. I miss the daughter who shared things. I stopped sharing when I realized everything I loved became ammunition. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. A beat of silence stretched between us. Then, softly, do you really want to be a waitress forever? I stared at her. I'm not a waitress, I said. I'm a writer. I waitress to pay rent. But that's not my name. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being exact. The door creaked behind me. Maya returned with a tray tea and toast, perfectly golden. She placed it between us. I made extras. Elaine looked down. Thank you. You're welcome, Maya said, then glanced at me. You okay? I nodded once. She lingered. Call if you need backup. Elaine waited until she was gone. She seems intense. She's the reason I started submitting again. Elaine stirred her tea. I just worry that you surround yourself with people who encourage your fantasies. I leaned forward. And I worry that you only respect dreams that come with a salary. I respect reality. No, I said. You fear uncertainty. So you call it realism and dress it in concern. You think I don't want the best for you? I looked her dead in the eye. I think you want the best version of you, living inside me. She stood, smoothed her coat. I should go. I didn't argue. She picked up her bag at the door. She paused. I hope you figure things out. I already have, I said. She didn't look back, and I didn't stop her. The email came at 6:42 a.m. on a Wednesday. I just sat down with coffee, planning to revise the scene where the protagonist walks away from her mother and doesn't flinch. The timing felt poetic. Subject line: submission accepted. Winter issue. I stared at it, blinked once, then again. The literary magazine was small, regional, but it had a real editor, a real readership, and a tiny blurb on poets and writers. I'd sent the short story in months ago, assuming nothing would come of it. But there it was. We're thrilled to include your piece Inheritance Tax in our upcoming winter issue. My heart stuttered. Maya emerged 10 minutes later, bleary-eyed and barefoot. You're smiling like someone who just won a quiet war. I got published. She froze. Wait, seriously? Winter issue. She whooped, lunged across the room, and hugged me hard. That's incredible. It's small. Nope, she said, pulling back. It's everything. I didn't tell Elaine, not out of malice, out of preservation. I printed the PDF when the issue went live, folded it neatly and slipped it into a manila envelope. No note, just the story, just the proof. The next time I visited Tommy's middle school play, I left it in the drawer in the hallway, under the old family photo albums, a private offering, quiet and sharp. The story was about a girl who inherited her mother's silences, who cracked open a piano just to find a voice inside. Rachel had said it was the most personal thing I'd written. You don't need to name her for everyone to know who it's about, she'd said. I hadn't replied. I didn't need to. A week after the story was published, the magazine's editor, Mr. Solano, emailed me. Subject: have you considered submitting a full-length manuscript? I read it 3 times before forwarding it to Rachel. She responded in under 5 minutes. This is the door. Don't knock. Walk through. I started pulling together my best pieces. Old ones I'd forgotten, new ones still raw. Rachel helped me order them: sorrow, hunger, rage, resolve. Like a symphony. She called it an emotional architecture. I called it mine. Maya taped a printed review to the fridge. Someone had written, haunting, honest, and precise. She doesn't yell, but every word echoes. I think you're becoming a brand, she said. I think I'm becoming a person. Elaine didn't mention the story. Not in a call. Not in a text. But when I visited, again 2 months later, it was sitting on the coffee table, folded open, the page lightly creased. I didn't say anything. She didn't either. But something shifted. She didn't tell me to get a haircut. She didn't suggest a new job. She didn't comment on my clothes. We ate lunch. She asked about Tommy's school. I listened. When I stood to leave, she touched my arm. I heard you're working on something new, she said. I paused. Yeah. Well, she said, you've always been good with words. I nodded once. I know. Back at the apartment, I sat down and opened a new document. Title: Permission Not Needed. The cursor blinked, and I began. Rachel called 2 weeks later. Solano wants a meeting. Meeting? He thinks you're worth pushing. I didn't breathe. He wants to introduce you to his friend at the indie press. When? Next Thursday. They're doing a reading event. He wants you on the list. I've never read aloud. You'll be fine. You've earned this. Don't retreat now. Maya stood behind me while I practiced. I stumbled twice. You're holding your breath, she said. Again. I exhaled. I'm terrified. Good, she said. Means it matters. The event was in a bookstore with creaky floors and walls lined with lamps, instead of overhead lights. Cozy. Confessional. My name was 3rd on the list. I read from inheritance tax. My voice didn't shake. When I finished, the room was still. Then applause. Not loud but full. Solano came up afterward. You read like you know who you are. Do I? He smiled. You're about to find out. That night, I walked home alone. The air was crisp, the sky open, and for the first time, I didn't wonder what Elaine would think. Back at the apartment, Maya was waiting on the couch. Well, they clapped. She threw a pillow at me. You're underselling. I read a paragraph about breaking dishes and everyone got very quiet. Success. I went to bed, the magazine folded under my pillow. I wasn't dreaming small anymore. And I wasn't dreaming quietly either. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I signed you up, Maya said, tossing a flyer onto the kitchen table. For what? Indie Arts Festival. Saturday night. You're performing. I looked at the flyer. Local, scrappy, a mix of spoken word, acoustic sets, and experimental movement pieces. If the font choices were any indication. No, thank you, I said. Maya crossed her arms. Why? Because I write, I don't perform. You play. Alone? She leaned against the fridge. You performed in a bookstore 3 weeks ago. That was different, was it? I didn't answer. She tilted her head. You're afraid. I'm cautious. You're afraid that if you open your mouth and don't sound like power, they'll hear everything you still question. I raised an eyebrow. Do you rehearse these speeches? She grinned. I wing it. By Thursday, she'd sent my name to the organizer and borrowed a portable keyboard from her theater friend, who owed her 2 favors and a ride to the DMV. You're up third, she said. Maya, trust me. The stage was a wooden platform at the edge of a community garden. Folding chairs, Christmas lights, a mix stand held together with electrical tape. Someone burned incense in the corner, and the sound tech wore pajama pants. I wanted to run, instead. I sat on the folding bench backstage, holding my hands still. Maya crouched beside me. What piece? Original, I said. From the second book. She nodded like it was obvious. Good. Let them meet you. The host called my name. Applause. Not polite, not skeptical, just there. I walked up, adjusted the mic. My name is I cleared my throat. Lena. I'm a composer and a writer. That was the first time I'd said it in public without bracing. I wrote this piece in a small apartment with a leaky roof and no heat. I was scared the entire time. This is what survived. A few people leaned forward. I started to play. The melody was slow at first, gentle, like something waking up, then sharper, climbing, folding into itself. I didn't look at the crowd. I kept my eyes on the keys. In the final minute, I layered in the note pattern that had come to me the night Elaine told me to grow up. The crowd didn't know that, but I did. The last chord hung in the air like breath. Silence, then someone clapped. Then the rest followed, not thunderous, but full. Backstage, Maya hugged me like I'd just crossed a finish line. You didn't die, she whispered. Not even a little. You owned that moment. I smiled. It didn't own me. Afterward, a girl in a denim vest approached. Is your stuff online? Some. She handed me a card. I work with a nonprofit that places music in social doc shorts. We look for original artists. You're resting. I blinked. Thanks. I mean it. You made the whole garden feel like a confessional. We walked home past closed shops and glowing windows. Maya kicked a pebble. You feel it. What? The shift. I nodded. Good, she said. Now keep going. Back at the apartment, I wrote a scene where the girl stops hiding in attics and starts building stages. The line that stayed with me. I stopped waiting for applause and started earning echoes. Elaine called 2 days later. I heard you played somewhere. I froze. From who? Carol's daughter saw something on Instagram. Said it was moving. Oh, a pause. Do you have a recording? Why? I'd like to hear it. I closed my laptop. I'll think about it. She exhaled. You've changed. No, I said. I just stopped folding. That night, I uploaded the live audio to a private link. I emailed it to her without a subject line. She never replied. But a week later, Tommy texted, "Mom played your piece during dinner. Twice. And that was enough." Rachel called me that Friday. "The second book. Halfway through. It's ready." I hesitated. "You think so? I know so. And now, so do you." I spent the next 4 nights writing until dawn. The music wove through the pages. The silence did too. But this time, I wasn't afraid of either. The day I finished the manuscript, Maya lit a candle and made pancakes. "To Lena," she said, raising her coffee mug, who finally played loud enough to be heard. I smiled. I wasn't playing to be heard. I said. She clinked her mug against mine. "I know," she said. "That's why they listened." It was a family dinner. Chicken, green beans, white wine in glass tumblers, the kind of spread Elaine made when she wanted to prove something. I hadn't been back in months. She'd called Tommy and asked him to persuade me. His bribe was simple. "If you come, I'll play you my new guitar riff and pretend I didn't steal it from Nirvana." So I showed up, softly dressed, no makeup, nothing that might look like defiance. Elaine opened the door and said, "You look rested." That was her version of a compliment. The table was full. Aunt Carol, Uncle Ben, to cousins I hadn't seen since high school. Tommy sat beside me, wearing a wrinkled flannel and a grin that cracked sideways. Elaine passed the potatoes. "Lena's still working at the diner," she said. I looked up. "And writing." I added. "Oh, right," she said, waving a hand like that explained my life. Uncle Ben leaned forward. "You still doing those poetry things?" "Novels. Mostly." "Do those pay?" I smiled. "Sometimes." Elaine took a sip of wine. "Lena's always been creative," she said. "She just hasn't figured things out yet." The sentence landed like a dropped fork. Tommy glanced at me. "Actually, she's published." Elaine tilted her head. "Self-published." "Dear." I turned to her. "You say that like it's a disqualification. It's just not the same as real publishing." I set my fork down. "What's real?" She shrugged. "Contracts, bookstores, reviews in newspapers." "I have reviews. Online," she said. "That's different." Aunt Carol laughed, nervously. "Well, it's all very modern, isn't it?" I looked around the table. Faces blinking, pausing, watching how I would respond. I thought of the hours I spent editing chapters, the nights I bled onto pages while the rest of the world slept, the readings, the features, the email from the indie press asking to discuss foreign rights. I thought of the quiet pride I'd been building like scaffolding, and how quickly Elaine could try to saw through it. After dinner, I stepped onto the back porch. The air smelled like hydrangeas and restraint. Tommy followed, strumming an imaginary guitar. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't do anything. She does it in front of people now. It's getting bolder." "She's not bolder," I said. "I'm just less manageable." He looked at me. "She's wrong. You know." "I know." He sat on the railing. "Your story made Mom cry." I turned. "What?" "The one from the magazine." She read it 3 times. Said nothing. Just folded it and wiped her eyes. She never told me. Of course not. But I saw her. I stared into the yard. "She still needs an audience. And you stopped performing." I looked at him. "I didn't realize you noticed." "I notice everything." Later, in the kitchen, I reached for the leftovers. Elaine stood at the sink, rinsing dishes with surgical precision. You embarrassed me, she said, not turning around. You embarrassed yourself. She turned. This attitude of yours is clarity. You used to respect me. I used to need you. Her hands tightened on the dish towel. Why do you always have to make things difficult? She asked. Because pretending makes me sick. She stepped closer. You think you're brave, but you're reckless. No, I said. I'm just done asking for permission. She stared at me. You've become impossible. No, I said again. I've become whole. I left early. Didn't take leftovers. Didn't say goodbye. Tommy texted an hour later. She's still standing by the sink. Hasn't moved. Rachel called that night. You okay? I don't know. Want the truth. Always. You're not broken. She just doesn't know what to do with someone she can't polish. I didn't call Elaine for weeks. And she didn't call me. But one afternoon, I received a package with no return address. Inside, my story, clipped from the magazine. Folded once, no note. Maya held it up. So she's reading you now. She's always been reading me, I said. Now she's just not denying it. That night, I wrote a chapter where the daughter stops attending dinners that taste like silence, where she hosts her own, feeds herself first, and leaves no seat for approval. Tommy texted again, started a song. First line's about you, second line's about her, third line still blank. I replied, let it hurt. Then let it land. He sent back a thumbs up emoji. Then, you're teaching me without saying it. Elaine still hadn't apologized. I realized I no longer needed her to. The betrayal was public now. Real, named, and in its shadow, I stood taller. Not despite it. Because of it. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I didn't write the second book in a fever. There was no revenge playlist. No cinematic montage of pages flying from the printer. It was deliberate, strategic, quiet. Like war. If war were waged in silence and lowercase letters, Rachel and I met. Every Tuesday over video. She wore red glasses and always had something in her mug that steamed dramatically. Her cat, Oliver, occasionally walked across the keyboard. Your spine is forming, she said after reading the first draft. Is that a compliment? It means you've stopped apologizing on the page. I didn't realize I was. You did, she said. You just didn't want to admit it. We built the launch plan like a puzzle. Pre-orders, newsletter signups, bookstagrammers, strategic teasers. A cover reveal that made people feel like they were discovering something instead of being sold to. I tracked metrics on a spreadsheet with color coding. Maya watched from the couch. You're turning into one of those people who schedules joy. No. I said, I'm turning into someone who doesn't leave success up to luck. I emailed Solano. He connected me with a designer. I made a press kit. I researched metadata optimization and author comp lists. I planned a digital book tour, not glamorous, not viral, but solid. Rachel called it professional emotional architecture. I called it finally taking myself seriously. Elaine texted one evening. I heard from Aunt Carol that you're releasing another book. I stared at it for a long time, then typed, yes. She didn't respond. Tommy texted me later that week. She bought a copy of your first one. Didn't tell anyone. Hid it in her drawer. I didn't answer right away. Then, maybe some truths are easier to digest alone. Maya helped me film a launch video. Just me, in front of the keyboard, talking about why I wrote the book, not polished, just present at the end. I played one of the pieces that inspired the final chapter. It ended with a note I held 3 seconds longer than needed. Maya wiped her eyes. That's your signature now. Restraint with teeth. The night before launch, I lit a candle and cleaned the apartment. Not for any reason, just to make room at midnight. The book went live. I didn't open the dashboard. I made tea instead at 8 a.m. Rachel texted. Pre-orders are higher than we projected. You're officially breaking your own ceiling. I smiled. Then I opened the dashboard. The numbers weren't viral, but they were solid, consistent. Elaine didn't say anything, but Tommy posted a photo of the book on his Instagram caption. My sister doesn't shout. She carves. I cried when I saw it, not loudly, just enough. That week, 3 different indie blogs requested interviews. Solano connected me with a podcast host. Rachel secured an online feature with a niche lit journal. Every sentence I'd written in darkness now stood in daylight. And nothing collapsed. Maya made a cake from a box and spelled prose queen in M and Ms. You're officially unignorable. She said, Is that a word? It is now. Elaine called on a Thursday. I didn't answer. She left a message. I saw the announcement. Congratulations. No warmth. No invitation. But still words. The kind I never expected. I didn't call back. Instead, I sent her a signed copy, no note, just a ribbon around the cover. Wrapped like a truth she'd have to open with both hands. The next morning, Tommy texted a photo of the book on the coffee table next to her tea. Not hidden, not moved. Just there. I went to the park that afternoon with my notebook. I wrote a new scene. A woman stands in the center of a crowded street, reading her own words aloud. No one asks her to speak, no one tells her to stop. She just reads. And people listen. That night, I wrote the dedication for Book 3 to the girl who whispered, then roared. I'm still listening. Asterisk. It didn't happen overnight. The rise was slow, measured. The way fog lifts, not with drama, but with inevitability. My book made it onto a curated list called Voices We Needed. Then a reading group picked it for their virtual club. Someone tweeted a quote and it spun shared, reposted, reinterpreted. She wrote her silence into a weapon. Rachel texted, You're in orbit. I replied, quietly. I stopped refreshing the sales page every hour. Instead, I checked my email. A message from an editor at an indie press. If you ever want to expand into nonfiction, I'd read whatever you wrote. A producer for a podcast. Your chapter on maternal erasure lit my spine on fire. Want to talk? And then Brendan, subject. Interview request. Room to speak podcast. This bio said. Host. Former English teacher. Lapsed poet. Soft-spoken instigator. I clicked on a few past episodes. His voice was low and warm, like someone speaking across a campfire. I agreed to the interview. We recorded on a Thursday. Brendan opened with, You write like someone who no longer flinches. I smiled. I flinch. I just keep going anyway. You've written about growing up under quiet forms of erasure. About reclaiming identity without drama. Has that changed how you see conflict? Yes, I said. I used to think survival meant not making waves. Now I understand that waves can carry you somewhere new. He paused. You write mothers. Well, I had a thorough education. Laughter. But soft. Respectful. Have you forgiven her? He asked. The line went quiet. Then I answered, I no longer require an apology. That's its own form of peace. When the episode aired, I didn't listen to it. I didn't need to. But the messages poured in. Women from everywhere. Strangers. Survivors. Creators. You wrote what I couldn't say. I didn't know I was allowed to feel this. You made me feel. Undead alone, I read them all, then closed my laptop and went for a walk. The wind felt like a second skin. Maya came home with a bottle of wine and a bag of off-brand chocolates. You're famous. I'm published. You're posted, praised, and possibly immortal. That's close enough. She raised her glass. To the silent girl who chose the microphone. Elaine didn't text, didn't call, but Tommy sent a screenshot of a Facebook post. Proud of my daughter Lena, whose new book is reaching so many hearts. Always knew she had a gift it had for likes and no comment from her. But it was there, in public, unearned but not denied. I printed it, not out of sentiment, out of documentation. Because some things are easier to believe when written down at night. I wrote slower now, more deliberately, not because I feared mistakes, but because I wanted to taste every sentence. Rachel said, "You're writing like someone who owns her voice." I said, "It took me long enough." She replied, "Worth it." I didn't post the news on family Facebook, didn't tag Elaine. Didn't reach back. The silence was intentional, not a punishment. A boundary. A reclamation. At a bookstore event, someone asked, "What would you say to your younger self?" I said, "She already knew everything. She just needed time to believe it." And when they asked, "What's next?" I answered, "More. Just more." Because I wasn't done. And because silence, once broken, only deepens. She called on a Tuesday. I almost didn't answer. Her name lit up my screen like a test one. Hadn't studied for. But my finger moved before my doubt did. "Hi," I said. "Hello," she replied. Her voice was brisk, not cold, formal. I waited as she cleared her throat. "Your Aunt Carol wants to know if you'll speak at the Women's Club. About your book, I guess." I blinked. "What?" She asked if I'd extend the invitation. "And you agreed." I told her I'd ask. Silence stretched between us. "When is it?" I asked. "Next Thursday. It's their local Women in the Arts series. Carol reads my work. She read about it in the paper. Your name was mentioned in a column." I leaned against the counter. "And they want me to speak." "Yes. You think I shouldn't." "That's not what I said." "It's what you mean." She exhaled. "Do whatever you want." "I usually do." She paused. "Will you come?" I closed my eyes. "I will." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Maya watched me iron my shirt 2 days later. "I never iron. You're going to war." It's a 10-minute talk and some finger sandwiches. Still war. Passive-aggressive war. But war. "I'm not going to fight." She grinned. "Lies." "I'm not," I said. "I'm going to stand still." And let her feel the difference. The church basement smelled like lemon polish and powdered coffee creamer, a rows of chairs, a folding table with sugar cookies, plastic cups sweating water, a fake ficus in the corner. Elaine was already seated 3rd row, center aisle, her posture impeccable, her smile unreadable. I wore all black. No jewelry, no makeup, just voice. Aunt Carol met me near the podium. "We're so proud," she whispered. Elaine never brags, but I know she's beaming. I glanced at my mother. She hides it well. Carol patted my shoulder. "Don't be nervous. We're all friends here." I nodded. "Of course." When they called my name, I walked to the mic without notes. "My name is Lena," I began. "I'm a writer. a composer, a woman raised in silence and shaped by it, a few heads tilted. I used to think strength was volume, that being heard meant being loud. But I was taught by example that quiet can be sharper than noise. Elaine sat motionless. I wrote my first song when I was 12, in secret. I stopped singing because I didn't want to be corrected. I stopped showing my writing because I was told it was unrealistic. I scanned the room. No blinking. But I never stopped creating. I just did it in the dark. A woman in the back dabbed her eye. I'm here because I wrote anyway. I played anyway. I failed and kept going. And now I speak. Not because I need applause, but because I know how heavy it is to be dismissed. I paused. I've learned that dreams whispered are not less powerful than dreams shouted. They're often just waiting for the right moment. Applause came, slow at first, then steady. Not thunder, just truth. Echoed. Elaine didn't clap. She folded her hands, stared at the floor. After, people approached. A teacher, a retired librarian, a woman who said her daughter loved my story about the girl with the piano and the closed door. They called me brave. They called me grounded. No one called me dramatic. Elaine waited by the exit. You spoke well, she said. Thank you. You didn't mention me. You weren't the point. She tilted her head. You made me sound cruel. No, I said. I made myself sound honest. I gave you everything. You gave me a box, I said, and a script. I rewrote it. She blinked. I don't know what you want from me. Nothing, I said. That's the change. She left before the cookie tray was empty. I didn't watch her go. Maya asked that night. How'd it feel? Like stepping out of a shadow. She nodded. Think she heard you. She didn't have to. I picked up my notebook. Wrote. One line. Even silence, when named, becomes sound. Asterisk. The women's club talk haunted her. Not immediately. Elaine didn't mention it the following week, or the one after, but the silence thickened. Tighter. Intentional. I knew her patterns. Repression. First, then rehearsal, then release. I expected it. Still, when the call came, it caught me mid-sentence. Halfway through revising a chapter where a daughter walks away and doesn't look back. I've been thinking, she said. I stared at the phone. About that talk. I waited. She didn't continue. I said, okay, double quotes. 3 days later, she invited me to coffee. Neutral territory. Not her kitchen. Not my apartment. A quiet cafe halfway between. I arrived 5 minutes early. She was already seated, hands folded neatly. Latte untouched. You look tired, she said. I'm working. You're always working. I smiled. That's how it happens. She didn't respond. We sat in silence until the server came. She ordered tea. I ordered nothing. I wasn't prepared for that speech. She said finally, I wasn't prepared for the way you erased me growing up. And yet, she winced. You make it sound like I was cruel. You were controlled. Constantly. And when you couldn't control me anymore, you disapproved instead. I was trying to protect you. From what? I asked. The risk of being myself. Her jaw tightened. You always twist everything. No, I said. I untwist it. She looked out the window. You know I loved you. I believe you loved me how you knew how to. But it wasn't the kind I needed. You never said that. I did. I said. Just not in words you were willing to hear. She exhaled slowly. So what do you want from me now? Nothing. Her head snapped toward me. I continued, calmly. This isn't a negotiation. It's a recognition. Of what? That I've changed, I said. And you haven't. She blinked. I don't need an apology, I added. I needed space. I made it. I live in it now. I'm still your mother. I never said you weren't. You act like it. I leaned forward, voice even. I act like someone who no longer needs approval to exist. She looked away. The cafe grew quieter. The hum of the espresso machine the only buffer. She reached for her cup, held it without drinking. I read your second book. I said nothing. I didn't agree with everything. That's fine. You made me sound I didn't. Right, you? You wrote a mother who diminished her daughter. I wrote a daughter who survived it. Her throat moved. You always did see me too clearly. No, I said. I only recently started looking without flinching. She finally took a sip, then, softly, you've become precise. I nodded. It was survival at first, then craft. It's unsettling. I'm not here to comfort you. She nodded once, put her cup down, straightened her sleeves. I suppose I have a lot to think about. You do. We both stood. She hesitated. Will you come for dinner sometime? I might. A pause. Don't do it out of obligation, she said. I never will again. We parted without touching, without bitterness, just clarity. That night, I walked home in cold air and didn't shiver. I played piano for 20 minutes, my newest piece, built around the rhythm of withheld words. I called it Porcelain Doesn't Bend. Rachel texted, "How did it go?" Like a chess match. I replied, "Who won?" I didn't need to. I wrote a chapter that night. The daughter meets her mother in a room filled with mirrors. The mother tries to adjust the daughter's reflection, but the daughter has learned to hold her own gaze. The final line, "I loved you enough to stop letting you sculpt me." Maya read it over my shoulder. That's a kill shot. It's not about killing. Okay, she said. Then it's the end of a quiet siege. Later, Elaine texted, "Thank you for meeting me." I stared at the words for a long time. Typed back, "You're welcome," then turned off my phone. The confrontation was over, and no yelling. No ultimatums, just a table, two voices, and the sound of a woman choosing peace without asking for it. Asterisk, she didn't call. She didn't text. But 3 weeks after the cafe, Elaine asked Tommy to ask me to visit. She's been different, he said. Different how? Quieter. I raised an eyebrow. She's not trying to fix everyone, he said. It's kind of creepy. I laughed. That's her baseline. He glanced down. She cleaned out the sewing room. I looked at him. The one no one's allowed in. He nodded. You should see it. I knocked once. She opened the door in house slippers, hair pinned, no makeup. The armor was off. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. You didn't ask me. You asked Tommy. Same result. Not the same method. She stepped aside. Would you like tea? I shook my head. No, just show me. She led me to the old sewing room. It had always been shut, protected, where she went when she wanted to be undisturbed, where I was never invited. Now the door stood open. Inside, the table was bare. The boxes were gone. On one wall, a bookshelf. On another, a small piano. My old one. I stepped inside slowly. It's yours, she said. I looked at her. I thought maybe you'd want a place to play when you visit. My throat tightened. You hated that thing. I didn't understand it. And now, I'm trying. She sat in the chair across from it. I read your latest manuscript, she said. You hacked Rachel's password. She smiled. Faintly. Tommy gave me a copy. I raised an eyebrow. He printed it, she added. I didn't ask. I sat on the piano bench. It's about daughters who leave, she said. It's about daughters who learn not to fold. She nodded. That too. We sat in silence. She looked older. Not tired. Just exposed. I never said I was proud of you. No. I am. I looked down at the keys. You don't have to say it now. But I want to. I pressed. One note. Soft. See, she closed her eyes. I didn't know how to love the way you needed. I know. I thought shaping you was saving you. I turned to her. You shaped me out of fear. I was afraid, she said, that you'd fail, that I'd lose you. You almost did. She swallowed. I'm still here, I added. She nodded. You are. I played something then. Nothing rehearsed. Just notes strung together from whatever was left unsaid. She didn't interrupt, didn't correct, didn't ask. She listened for the first time. When I stopped, she stood slowly. Thank you, she said. For what? For not walking away sooner. I stayed an hour. We didn't talk much after that. Before I left, she walked me to the door. I'm reading your books again, she said. Start with the middle one. It's the most honest. She nodded. I like the honesty. I stepped outside. Lena, she said suddenly. I turned. You wrote yourself out of my reach, she said, and into your own hands. I didn't reply. I just nodded once. Then I left. Back home. I wrote the ending to the new book. The daughter returns, not to seek approval, but to prove she never needed it. Not a confrontation, a confirmation. The last line. She sat in the room I built from silence and finally called it home. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The book signing was at a small independent shop tucked between a florist and a bakery. That smelled like almond glaze and yeast. The window display featured a stack of my novels beside a chalkboard sign that read, Tonight. Local. Author Lena Marin. 6 p.m. Local. Author. 2 words that once would have made me flinch. Now they felt earned. Maya helped me pick the outfit. Black blouse. Dark jeans. Boots that made a quiet sound when I walked. Soft armor. Rachel sent a bouquet with a card. No stage needed. They're already listening. I held the card in my hand as the first readers filtered in by 6:10. The room was full. People stood along the back wall, coffee in hand. The bookstore cat made rounds between ankles. I signed books. I smiled. I listened. 2 strangers say things I never thought anyone would feel because of words I'd written. You wrote me, a woman said. You didn't know me, but you wrote me. I thanked her. Meant it. And then I saw her, Elaine, back row. Alone. Hands folded. In her lap. Coat still buttoned. No expression. She didn't wave. Didn't smile. But she stayed. When the reading began, I stood behind a small lectern and adjusted the mic. Thank you for being here, I said. This book started in a quiet apartment with a leaky roof and no curtains. It was written between shifts and doubts and the sound of my own second-guessing. The crowd waited. I used to write afraid. Afraid of being too much. Or not enough. Of being dismissed. I looked up briefly. Our eyes didn't meet. But I kept writing. Because some stories deserve to be told, even when no one claps. A few people nodded. I read a short passage one where the protagonist carves her name into a table she wasn't invited to sit at. When I finished, people clapped, soft, then fuller. Elaine didn't. But she didn't leave. After the reading, I signed more books, smiled for photos, answered questions. Elaine lingered in the back, never moved forward, never made herself visible. Maya appeared beside me, whispering, "She came. I saw. She didn't talk to anyone. She's not here. For them." Maya touched my arm. "You okay?" "I'm good." When the crowd thinned, I stepped away, into the back room, closed the door. Elaine didn't follow. Later, as I packed up, I noticed a copy of the book on the signing table with no name written inside. Just a note, scribbled on a sticky tab tucked between pages. "Thank you for not needing me to understand. Before you started, no signature." But I knew the handwriting. Back at the apartment, Maya poured wine into chipped glasses. "To the room full of readers," she said. "To the one who didn't leave," I replied. We clinked. "I still can't believe." "She came," she added. "She didn't come to celebrate. No, she came to witness." I didn't call Elaine the next day, and she didn't call me. But the bookstore owner emailed me a photo from the event. In it, I'm reading, and in the background, my mother sits quietly watching. I printed it, not to frame, just to keep a record of the moment she sat in my audience, not at my table. I wrote that night, a scene where the daughter fills a room with her voice, and the mother listens from the doorway, uninvited but present. The final line, "She didn't need to clap. Her silence was finally enough." The second book hit bestseller status quietly. No flashing lights, no red carpets, just numbers climbing steadily, charts, sales reports, and emails from bookstores requesting signed copies. I held my breath when I saw the hardcover edition, my name embossed in gold foil across the spine. It was surreal. I sent her a copy, no note, just the book. I imagined her holding it, maybe reading the title, feeling the weight, maybe even tracing the letters. Weeks later, Tommy sent me a photo. The book sat on the coffee table next to her cup of tea, unmoved, unspoken. But there, Elaine didn't call, didn't text. She just let the book live in her space. And that was enough. I didn't expect an apology or a congratulations, not even a "I'm proud." I just wanted her to witness, to watch from afar, to see what I'd built. At a signing event, someone asked me what it felt like to be a best-selling author. I thought of the long nights, the crumpled drafts, the silenced doubts. I smiled. It feels like permission. Permission I never asked for, because I gave it to myself. Maya came to the event with a bouquet of wildflowers. "Look at you," she said. "Gold foil and all." I laughed. Who knew persistence was this shiny? She clapped me on the back. Shiny, yes, but more important, real. I thought about Mom, about the woman who folded my dreams like paper cranes, about the daughter who refused to fold, about the space between us, filled with words unspoken. I wrote her once more. Not a letter, not a message, just a line in my journal. Some names are written in ink, others in gold foil. Later, I sat by the window and played a new piece on the piano, slow, deliberate. A melody about quiet victories, about being seen, about finally shining. Elaine never mentioned the book, but that didn't matter, because the gold was no longer for her, it was for me, and anyone who needed to know that dreams, no matter how ridiculed, could be gilded. I don't dream small anymore. That girl who whispered maybe and what if has become a woman who plans and builds. Not quietly, not loudly, just deliberately. I moved out of the leaky apartment, got a place with windows that opened to sunlight, not noise. Walls that didn't hold memories of damp. A kitchen where I cooked for myself, not for anyone's approval. I still write at night, still compose melodies on a piano that doesn't need coaxing. But now, the words come without hesitation. The notes hold their ground. Elaine watches from a distance, not with pride, not with applause, just presence, like a shadow that stopped chasing. I don't need her belief anymore, only mine. At a conference, someone asked, "What's the secret to your success?" I said, not asking for permission, because the permission I sought was never hers to give. It was mine to claim, and claim it I did. The mornings are still quiet, but now the silence feels like space, not absence. I make plans, publishers reach out. Interviews come with respect, not doubt. I teach workshops now. Women who carry stories like mine, who fold themselves small to fit expectations, who need to hear, "You are enough. You are enough." One student asked, "How did you start?" I smiled, by believing my dreams weren't stupid. Sometimes I wonder what Elaine thinks, if she understands what it means to let go, if she sees me as more than the girl she told to be practical. But I don't wait for that answer anymore. I don't wait for anything. I write. I compose. I live, and in the quiet moments, I know my dreams are mine, and they are loud enough at night. I play my newest piece. It's called Resilience. The melody climbs and falls like breath, like life, like a promise kept. When the notes fade, I sit back, close my eyes, and feel the weight of a life built on whispered dreams now roaring.